Well, that's it. It's the end of the dig and everybody's away. Hello and welcome to the Longston Local History Group's first report on how we're hoping to solve a local Derbyshire mystery. Back in 2009, when we started surveying these humps and bumps of what was then only thought to be an Iron Age hill fort, none of us could have had any idea at all of the story that we were going to unearth.
Are you all ready for some digging?
Yeah!
The FinCop investigation began life as a lottery-funded community project, so it was led by proper archaeologists but involved everyone, from enthusiastic local primary school kids to equally enthusiastic pensioners.
I'm the scraper. So we've got a flint scraper, folks.
There were flint and pottery finds, which indicated that early man had lived and worked here. But we also discovered that at least one of his Iron Age descendants had died here. The dig continued the following year, and in the 3 trenches that we dug across the defensive ditch, we found the skeletal remains of 9 women and children. In 2012, we dug in the next field so as to be well away from the previous trenches, but once again we uncovered the same story. This time there were the bones of another 6 individuals in amongst the destruction debris down in the ditch. And that's how things stood when, at the beginning of June 2014, diggers from Sheffield Time Travellers joined a few stalwarts from the Longston Local History Group to work on what had to be the final dig of the FinCop project, and it was to be a southern extension of 2012's Trench 9.
The reason we're looking at this stretch is because what we're trying to find out is there an earlier phase to the defences? If there is, what you might get is a construction slot, sort of fairly vertical sided trench cut into the rock, but taking a big timber palisade. And then we'll work down the bottom with this last couple of metres of ditch, and obviously with that we're looking to see if we've got any further human remains and any further evidence for how the site was destroyed.
Pretty soon the deturfing was completed and the excavation began in earnest. The topsoil removed, roll on day 2 and some proper archaeology. Tuesday started more like March than June, but by the time it had brightened up, the diggers were unearthing the familiar features of a ditch.
Nice work down the bottom.
That was full of tumbled rocks.
The experienced crowd.
Then the first bones were found.
Looks like a bit of pelvis.
All right.
Whatever they weren't human, but they were bagged and recorded along with several bits of worked chert. And so, day 2's digging concluded with a familiar looking trench across the hill fort's ditch and ramparts. Wednesday's dress code obviously depended on how hard you were working. Needless to say, I had my fleece and coat on, but the diggers were keeping warm, removing slabs of tumbled wallstone from the ditch and these fragments of charcoal from the foundations of the rampart, and getting all excited over this interesting looking void, which disappointingly turned out to be just a lot of nothingness. Surprise, surprise, it started raining again, but the work continued. And then, down in the ditch, Richard found a fragment of bone that could have been human.
Down here.
And when the next piece of bone came out of the ditch at around 2:30, we were all glad of an excuse to stop what we were doing and spectate.
Yeah. Sort of rough, isn't it?
The rain continued. It was muddy. And then the bones were identified as definitely being animal. Roll on tomorrow. Well, it's the final day's digging here at FinCop this year. And in the trench behind me, they're beginning to clean everything up, ready to be recorded. Well, this 2014 dig hasn't turned up any human remains in the defensive ditch, but as Clive explained to the diggers, it has provided some really valuable information about the construction of these ramparts.
We've actually got one of the better showing sections of the wall that we've had, and you can see really the way they've done it, and this is classic hill fort building technique. What they've basically done, they've cut the rock cut ditch out the front there. We've explained how it looks unfinished because as you can see it's stepped up here, and we know from when we excavated all this area on this side a couple of years ago that it dives down again, so it looks like there's different work gangs working into each other. They've won the stone out of there, and then what they've done, they've scooped in, and you can just about see the kind of cut, if you like, here. See how it changes colour? So they've actually taken this earth and stone out back to this area. They've hoyed that out, and then in its place they've then built this stone revetment which is running through here, and you can see some of it there, and they've sort of put this packing in that bit, and then bonded the wall, built the wall up over here, and then we've got the slumped wall face here with these large blocks, and you can see this block here is quite obviously shunted forward. So if you imagine that just back a little bit, you can see the face running across here, and they would have then built the wall up, and you can see the wall's about 4 metres or so wide, possibly even a tad more here. You can imagine then that we'd be looking a similar height as well. So given that it's white limestone as well, when seen from below you would have seen this huge white wall at the top of the hill, so very impressive as well. But what is clear, and it's been clear in every trench we've dug, is that the ditches were never finished. And we also know that outer rampart that they started, again, was only ran for about 50 metres, and that was never finished. So I think what's great about this site is it's caught this kind of glimpse in time, this moment in time, you know, nearly 2,500 years ago, when people were reacting to what was obviously at the time a very serious threat, and one that, as we know, actually came to fruition.
The one remaining question that this, the final trench on Fincop, could answer required the diggers to clear down to the bedrock to see if there was any evidence for an earlier wooden palisade. But, as Clive suspected, there wasn't. And so the archaeological investigation of the Fincop Hill Fort concluded. On Friday, day 5, we returned to fill the trench back in again.
Memories of Fincop, throwing stones in the trench.
There really is no nicer place to work than Fincop, even when it's raining.
And after Philippa and the volunteers had done their bit, Clive had the honour of replacing the final turf.
Well, my abiding memory of Fincop will be the blue skies and the birdsong.
Trying to keep warm.
The second day when we saw the buzzards circling overhead, waiting for somebody to drop.
Skeletons promised, sheep delivered.
Oh, it's got to be the camaraderie.
The steady drizzle on Wednesday.
Digging a very large natural pit.
Well, that's it. It's the end of the dig. And everybody's away.
And we've hopefully found out some of the secrets of Fincop.